Hello, hello. Welcome to the Athletic Hockey Show. I am Sean McIndoe. This summer at the Athletic Hockey Show, we're doing something a little different. Other Sean Gentili and I are going to be profiling NHL teams that could use some fixing. And we're going to pick out 8 or 10 teams, including today's, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, this is a team that doesn't get a lot of attention, so you may not have heard very much about them, but they could use a little bit of fixing. Last year, not great. So we got our Leafs reporter, Jonas Siegel, here. He's going to join us for the next 30 minutes or so, and we're going to talk about the overhaul in Toronto. Got a new GM, a new advisor, a new head coach, a new assistant coach as of very recently as we're recording this, as well as first overall pick and a whole bunch of new players. But are those new players enough is going to be the big question. Hey, Jonas, how are you? How's your summer going?
It is good. It's been a lot to process, as I'm sure it has been for you. Like, there's been, just since the start of January, like, forget about last fall, the amount of stuff that has happened with this team is just overwhelming.
Yeah, it's been a high volume of change, certainly. And it feels like some pretty extreme swings up and down. I mean, nothing will ever top that 24-hour or so period where we got the John Chaika, Matt Sundin introductory press conference, which I think it's fair to say did not go optimally.
No. Followed
by the draft lottery win. So it kind of feels like that's the ups and downs, and then everything else is in between. And what makes it interesting is that at the end of all of it, when you look at this roster, it's very different volume-wise. Mm-hmm. Large percentage of guys having changed, but is it going to be enough? And I let's start up front, because that's where the heaviest volume has been. I mean, it feels like we're going to get pretty close to a 50% turnover. And yet, the vast majority of that 50% is going to be the bottom 6. So I will ask you this to kind of frame the discussion, and then you can tell me what you think of all the moves we've seen so far. In all of the postmortems that you read, consumed, wrote, created, all those conversations, did you ever hear anyone say that the 2025-26 Maple Leafs, their biggest problem was the bottom 6?
No, but I think if you look at like the type of players that they added, they meet the qualifications in some ways of what I think they were missing in part. I'm glad you broke it up into top 6, bottom 6 too, because I think the top 6, it's now easy to kind of overlook that it's not really that different, like if it's different at all. But the bottom 6, like I looked at them heading into free agency and I thought they needed to get faster. I thought they needed better defenders in their forward group. I thought they needed more tenaciousness. I thought they needed more playmaking in their forward group. And I think you look at the forwards that they got and like they checked off some of those boxes. I thought they needed more help at center. Are they substantially better at center than what they were before? Maybe. It's definitely not like a sure thing. As of yet, they have not replaced or found an upgrade on John Tavares in the top 6 as far as like center ice goes. So like you could make an argument that the forward group is better in some ways and maybe worse in some ways, or the same in some ways. Like, which part is more interesting to you? What they did in the bottom 6 with like the Pauls and the Sissons and types like that? Or is the fact that they didn't really touch the top 6 beyond obviously winning the draft lottery with McKenna, and then I guess what you think of Jack Roslovic?
Yeah, who is sort of the wild card here, because he really reminds me a lot of a Max Domi.
Yep.
In that, in theory, you look at the numbers, you look and you go, yeah, we can find a spot for that, and yet he's kind of a guy who, you look at his skill set, he's got to be there in the top 6. And yet, is he skilled enough to be in the top 6? Can he produce enough? And then you drop him down to the bottom 6 and you go, well, wait a second, this isn't the skill set here. And especially with what the Leafs seem to want to do. And So where does he slot it? Where do you think ideally, in a perfect world before injuries and all the other stuff that we know is going to hits, where do they see Jack Roslovic going right now?
It's a fascinating question. I've spent the last week like playing around with every possible line combination that they could explore. I think like there are 5,000 of them. And it's like everywhere I put him, I'm like, like, I don't know if I love that. Like, obviously you look at his connection with Austin Matthews forever ago. Like, does that matter? I don't really know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's like, do you want to play a guy who's not great defensively, more shooter than passer? Do you want to play him on a top line against really tough competition? It's like, I don't love it. Like, I could see it, but I don't love that. And then it's like, okay, well, let's move down a line. Do you want to play him with John Tavares potentially? And like, I don't know who's on the other side. Is it Matthew Knies? It's like, I don't love that. And then like you mentioned the bottom six, it's like, well, if I'm going to use Nick Paul, let's say as the third line center, I want to use that line against other top lines. I want to play in the defensive zone. It's like, do I really want to play him there? It's like, not really. So it's like it presents the same Domi question where it's like, yeah, like you can find stuff about Domi that helps. Like he can make a pass, but it's like when you try to put him in the lineup and you're like, where is the best fit? It's like everywhere is comes with this little caveat. And so I don't know. I did think it was interesting that John Chaika mentioned that they wanted to get another right shot into their forward group. And you think specifically a right shot to play with Austin Matthews, because ever since Mitch Marner left, it's been mostly lefties with the odd bit of William Nylander tossed in there. So you wonder if that's something they're thinking about, like having a right-handed shot playing with Matthews, if that opens up more opportunities for him. So I don't know. Like, I don't know that I see an ideal fit for him. Like I like Easton Cowan more as a top six player than him next season, but I mean, they signed him for 2 years too. Like I liked Victor Arvidsson as a fit better than him. I don't quite know what happened there, why he wasn't the choice, especially because the money wasn't really that much more for a significantly better player, in my opinion. But I don't know, like, is there somewhere that is screaming out to you where it's like he has to play there?
There isn't. And that's, that's the question mark. And I hope it's not the Austin Matthews connection. The fact that these guys knew each other as teenagers. Like I'm having flashbacks to the Sioux Greyhounds thing under Kyle Dubas, where they're like, no, we have somebody who knew Matt Murray when he was 13, and so that's why this move is going to work out. And then surprise, surprise. And then when it comes to the guys who are definitely penciled in for the bottom six, I will say there's a part of me that likes this because I was going to say I'm old school. I'm just old. But I'm old enough to remember when the Leafs had like the Zezelberg Osborne checking line. I love that line. That is one of my all-time favorite Maple Leaf lines. So you just send them out. They're going to win every face-off. They're going to win every battle. And I've been begging for a return to, something that looks like that again. Now, that having been said, don't we do this every year in Toronto? It feels like every single year in Toronto, they go, we don't have enough truculence, snot, whatever the word is. We're not hard enough to play against. We need more grit and sandpaper from the bottom six. So here's a whole bunch of new bottom six guys that we went out and got and paid and maybe overpaid. And then after we get a year of that, and then they go, okay, obviously we got the wrong guys. So, but this time we're going to get all new guys who are going to come in. And it's just like, I mean, this is Brad Treliving did this. Dubas tried to go a little more skill initially, but towards the end, he was going very old school on the hard to play against. I guess my question as a fan would be, why is this group that came in, why is this going to be different than the Dakota Joshua's last year and, the guys 2 years ago and on down the list of how often they seem to do this?
I think the case you could make is that these are different players. Are they better players? I don't know. Like, I like these players individually. Like, Colton Sissons played a lot in a lot of different roles for Vegas last year. Like, I can see why they would like someone like that, like someone you can play at center, someone you can play on right wing, someone who's going to kill a lot of penalties. I don't love the contract. That's a lot 4.5 or 4.25 for 2 years and I think he's going to be 33 in November and like not going to produce a ton of offense. Like the contracts you could really quibble with, like a 3-year deal for Duhaime. It's like fourth liner getting a 3-year deal. Like we've seen that before. You're right. Like they're all bets. And I think maybe the most interesting one, the most potential to actually pay off is Nick Paul. But it's like, why is Tampa trading him? Like Tampa is, I mean, you and I would probably say, is that the smartest team in the league? If it's not the smartest, it's the second smartest. And
we can get into that as we go through the other positions, because I had somebody point this out to me, and if you're keeping track at home, this is going to be the second early 90s Leafs reference of the show, not the last, I'm sure.
Can we get to 10?
We might get to double digits, but somebody pointed out to me that when Cliff Fletcher showed up in Toronto, the first thing he did as far as establishing the winning culture and everything that he wanted to do, he started going out and getting Oilers and Flames and bringing them to Toronto. Grant Fuhr, Glenn Anderson, Doug Gilmour, obviously, and all of that, because those were the two best teams in the league, and those were those two rivals, and he wanted that intensity and he wanted everything. And now here we are, Lord knows how many years later. I don't even want to think about how many years later. And it feels like John Chaika and Matt Sundin are kind of doing the same thing with the Panthers and the Lightning. Mm-hmm. Except, man, the Panthers and Lightning are two real smart teams. And when you see them saying no thank you to certain players, and then the Leafs jump in and grab them, it's kind of like, all right, it does feel a little bit like the whole, like, if you can't spot the sucker at the pool or at the poker table within a certain number of hands, bad news, it's probably you. Are we the suckers here? Like, is that possible?
It's possible, and especially because it's not like you look at Nick Paul's contract and you're like, man, they really got to get off that contract. The contract looks fine, like 3.15 for the next 3 years. But then you look at last year and like it wasn't a good year for him. He was hurt to start the year. The production was down. He didn't play as much. Tampa has better forwards, so like you can kind of make a case. Like you can be like, well, they added Gord, and suddenly like they don't need him as much. And like they had Gensel, and they have Point, and they have Kucherov, and they have Cirelli. You know, like you could make a case where it's just like he got a little older. He started late. It didn't go great. And the Leafs are betting on the fact that like he's going to be more important to them. He's going to bounce back. Like he's not old, like he's 31. But it's like Tampa traded him for a backup goalie. It's like, that's interesting. But like you could see the idea of it. Like I think he'll spend time in the top 6, like he did in Tampa. Like he played a lot with their best players. Is he going to be the third line center that this team has been craving? Like maybe. Is he so much better than like Nick Waugh? Maybe. But then, like, you look at other additions. Like, I like Teddy Bluger. I like. Is he so much better than Scott Laughton? In some ways, yeah. In some ways, no. So, like, you could kind of pick these guys apart and be like, is it so much better than what they had before? I think defensively and speed wise, it is. But then, as you and I both know, this team's issue in the playoffs has not generally been that. It's been the goal scoring, and so I think like looking at all these forward additions kind of gets away from the big question. Is like the biggest question of all is like, what is Austin Matthews going to look like next year? Because like all of these other guys, like it doesn't really matter if he looks the way he did at times last year, where he's just not the same player, it won't matter, right? Like it's just not going to matter.
Yeah. If it's 40 goal Austin Matthews and not, let's say 55 goal Austin Matthews, ideally with gusts up to the 60s, but then you're right. This doesn't matter. And what about a guy we've mentioned, but Matthew Knies?
Yeah.
What is the deal here? Because it feels like the Leafs have been waiting for a player like this for so long on a nice cheap contract, all of that, and we're now into like it was one thing when we heard that Brad Treliving was trying to trade him, because that may have been a GM fighting to keep his job. We're now into a second administration that really seems hell-bent on moving this kid. Why? And where is this coming from? And what kind of impact is this going to have on a 23-year-old who has got to be feeling like, am I really wanted here?
I think there's so many different layers to it. I think one of the layers is you look at their roster and he is like the one screaming trade chip you have to get somebody who fills a more important need. So like we talked about Zach Werenski as a possibility. Like if you can trade Matthew Knies for Zach Werenski, you do it. So I think that's one layer because like William Nylander, no movement clause, Austin Matthews, no, then you're not trading those guys like if you're trying to compete. And then you go down the rest of the roster. It's like the rest of these guys like aren't going to get you anything substantial. So there's that. I think one of the other interesting things with him is like, I think there is probably some debate internally about how good he actually is and whether some of the surface stuff, like the goals, the physicality, how impactful he is on actually like driving winning. Because if you really want to get into the numbers, like you could pull his numbers, and I've looked at this when he doesn't play with Austin Matthews, it doesn't look as good. Shocking. And so you could be like, well, like, is he really that good? And like, he didn't score as much last year. Mitch Marner wasn't there. Like, was he cashing in on playing with like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, two of the best forwards in the world? Like, was that part of it? So I think that there's that layer. And I think that's probably overthinking it a lot, because if you look at the minutes he plays that aren't with Austin Matthews, it's generally with John Tavares, who is a very good player, but obviously not Austin Matthews, a different point in his career as well. So there's that. And then your question about like, how is he going to handle this? I don't know, because like, I'm not convinced that this is done, like that they're just keeping him now. And I wonder once this is kind of out there, if this just is going to linger until they actually trade him. Like, don't you kind of feel like this is just an inevitable point that whether it's a year from now, 6 months from now, a month from now, he's just going to be traded for something because for some reason, maybe it's one of the reasons I mentioned, they're just not convinced that he's as good as he is, and they feel like they can use him to get someone better.
That's what it feels like to me. I had an NHL GM tell me once that every time they're about to trade for somebody, the thing that keeps them up at night is what does their current team know about them that we don't?
Yep.
Why are they willing to move him when they know him better than anybody else? And is it possible that they see something we don't? And you just wonder that with Matthew Knies. And I say this as someone who's, like I've said for a long time, there should be no untouchables on this Leafs team. So if Knies is the guy that everyone's calling about, take the calls, have the conversations. But it just, at some point, it feels like it's hit a bit of a tipping point where there's more to it than that. So let's use this as a, we'll transition to the blue line, and we'll start off with the name you mentioned, Zach Werenski, where it seemed there was about a 12-hour period where that seemed like it could be imminent with him coming to Toronto, and then we all saw the sort of kiss and make up that happened in Columbus and the statements, and we're going to be here. Is that dead, or is that sleeping for now? Is there any chance that Zach Werenski comes back onto the market anytime soon, and would the Leafs still be at the front of the line if that happened?
I would think so to both questions. I guess the bigger question for the Leafs is if what you had wasn't getting it done in the summer, is that going to change? And I guess it could, right? Like if Matthew Knies comes out and he's just like takes a real step, and it's like, man, this guy's going to score 35 goals. And it's like, this guy is leaping up into something else. But then I guess the question becomes like, then do you want to trade him? Like he's on a good contract. He's still really young. I mean, I guess like other pieces could become more attractive. Like if Easton Cowan takes a step, I guess that's possible. But to go back to like Knies, clearly Columbus was like, that's not good enough, I would think, or the trade would presumably be done. Like if you could put your best package in Knies as a centerpiece, I mean, obviously they decided that wasn't enough. So is that going to change in the season? I don't know. Is it going to change for Tampa? Like, I just feel like the Werenski situation, I don't know, I'm sure you probably feel the same. They're just kicking this can down the road. Like he has basically told them, I am not re-signing in 2 years. So what are you waiting for? Like, and then as time goes on, like how does the Leafs offer change? Does it change? I don't know. Like, I just think it's really interesting. And he would obviously change the complexion of everything for them, especially if in a year from now you could re-sign him or extend his contract, I mean. So I don't know. Like I can't imagine it's dead. I kind of just think, as you said, it's sleeping.
So Doesn't sound like Zach Werenski's going to fall out of the sky anytime soon. But they did add another guy who got some Norris votes.
Did he?
This year. Darren Raddysh was one of 14 defensemen, I want to say, that got Norris votes this year. And he got more. It was a handful, but it was a few. And I'll say, you look down the list of those other guys, and it is just a nonstop list of guys who, in theory, would never be available.
Yep.
At any price, at any contract, whatever you want to say. And then you get to Darren Raddysh, and the Leafs go out and get him for a 5th-round pick, and they sign him to a contract that at the time felt kind of reasonable. And it feels like the entire salary thing has been reset by Leo Carlsson, so now suddenly maybe he's a bargain. The term is obviously ugly, but where are we on this player? Because this is not a profile that we have seen very often, where a guy isn't even in the NHL, finally cracks it, has a couple of good years, and then has a legitimately great year last year. And we should emphasize, this wasn't just a guy who went on a shooting percentage bender and scored a few more goals than he normally would. He was really good, all 200 feet, driving play, go on down the list of what you want a defenseman to do, but he's done it one time. And at his age, I guess maybe my question would be, what's your sense of, what are the Leafs banking on? Do they think they're getting that guy from last year in Tampa for the most of the next 8 years, or something else? Or what's the thinking there to take this enormous gamble on a guy who seems like such a question mark?
Well, I think if you're them and you're trying to improve the defense, you're looking at free agency, and besides him, there's not really anybody else you're looking at and you're like, that guy's going to make us so much better. Like Rasmus Andersson obviously re-signed in Vegas. I don't think he's changing their team in the way that Raddysh potentially can. And then it's like, well, okay, can you make a trade for someone better? It's like, well, the best guy available we just talked about is Zach Werenski. And like, obviously they didn't have enough to get that done. So you look at his skill set and you look at what they've had, and it makes sense. Like, I get it. Like, he's got a big shot, one of the hardest shots in the league. They have lacked that, obviously, for a long time now. They've lacked that specifically on their power play forever. Like, you and I have watched all those playoffs where it's like, man, they could really use somebody who could shoot the puck, and they just have never had it. And then you mentioned, like, playing tough minutes, and, like, he can play a lot. And so the question is, like, how much of last year was real? Like, I don't think he's going to score 22 goals. I don't think he's going to have, I think he had 72 points. I would take the under for both those things. But if you told me he had 15 goals and 50 points next year, and he's playing 23 minutes a night, and he's reliable and he's pretty good, I wouldn't be really surprised. And I just think it's like a 1-2 year bet, really, that revolves around Austin Matthews. Like, if he comes in, he helps their team, they make the playoffs, they have a good year, Matthews extends his contract, then it's like, cool. Like, the cap is going to continue to go up. That contract will look okay, depending on how he ages, obviously. But if Matthews decides after next year, you know what, I'm not sticking around, then they're rebuilding anyway. And like, the contract, like, it doesn't matter as much, and maybe they can move that contract at a certain point. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get the logic behind it. I think the bet makes sense given the other options, given what they had. But it is a bet. Like, and you mentioned, like, it's an 8-year contract, and he is 30, and it's like, Tampa is like a unique organism, and it's like, what happens when you're outside of that? You're not playing with Kucherov, right? It's the same thing.
Tampa had this guy.
Mm-hmm.
They, in theory, know him better than anyone. That is not an organization that has ever been shy about giving max length deals to guys. That they, I mean, you look down their list, whether it's first line, third line, bottom pair, they will give you 7-8 years if they feel like you're an indispensable piece. And they not only did not choose to do that with Darren Raddysh, they traded him, facilitated a sign and trade with a division rival. I can't help but be a little bit nervous about what Julien Brisebois and friends might know or think they know here. That is something that's makes me nervous, and we'll get to make that point one more time when we get to the goaltending. But before we do, because Raddysh is the big change on the blue line. Other than that, as of now, it's not that different. What's the Morgan Rielly status at this point?
It is interesting because for like 3 weeks there, it was like he's getting traded. And I went into this whole process thinking, I think this trade is going to be harder than is being perceived. Like there was just this perception like, yeah, they're just going to trade him. He's just going to submit the teams. They're just going to trade him. It's like, well, there's like all these complications. Like he's getting older. He's 32. He didn't have like the last 2 years weren't great. His contract is 4 more years. He has a no movement clause. Like, how is this like, why is this going to be so easy? And if I'm another team, why am I just helping the Leafs take him? I think another question is like, why are they moving him? Like, what is the urgent need to trade him? So I'm assuming he's coming back. But I would not be surprised if August, whatever, we wake up and we're like, yeah, they traded him. They decided to pay, I don't know, what do you think it costs to, I guess, like, what is the sweetener to get a team to take Morgan Rielly?
That's the question, right? Because, I mean, what does that look like in a world where Darnell Nurse just got traded with no retention? Who is a guy who,
yeah, but
you
but
could
like,
argue
Sean,
is better, but
yeah, but then like
contract.
You think back to like some of the sweeteners that the team we're talking about here has paid. It's like the Leafs paid a first-round pick for 1 season of Patrick Marleau's contract. They paid, I'm trying to remember the price for Nick Ritchie when they had to trade him. Was it like a second and a third or something? It was something like that. And like, I think he had like 2 years left and not like, it wasn't a huge contract. So like if I'm team whatever and I'm like, you guys, like you want to trade him, I'll just wait until like you've given me what I want. And then like to go back to your point about Knies, it's like, is he just going to come back and like, we're just going to forget about all this? Like, what do you think that even looks like?
And I guess, also, why are they looking to trade him? Because
yes,
the blue line of this team is old and made up of a lot of guys who are locked in long term. So I get, you might just look at it and say, okay, Morgan Rielly, we have to move Morgan Rielly in order to free up space for Darren Raddysh and other guys that may be coming in. Or is it about, we need to change the culture, change the dynamic? Morgan Rielly's been here forever. He's the one guy who reaches all the way back to even the days before Austin Matthews. It's time to move on in order to have the fresh start, in which case kind of feels like at that point you're not trading for value. You're trading to move on from a guy, in which case you got to go out and get it done. I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth. There's a part of me that says if there are teams in this league that voluntarily want Jacob Trouba at 4 years times 8.5,
right,
there should be somebody out there who wants Morgan Rielly at 4 times 7 and change. But clearly that hasn't materialized yet.
Well, and Sean, like to that point, I had Shayna Goldman, who obviously works for The Athletic, pull up like what Morgan Rielly would have been projected to get as a free agent. And it wasn't like that much different from his contract. Like I think we did a 3-year contract and it was like 6 something, and he's got 4 years left at 7.5. But to your other point, like about it just feeling like it's time. Last year was like the first time where I felt some of I've kind of had enough of this vibes from him, like the same vibes I felt the last couple of years with Mitch Marner, where it's like even the season before he left, it was like he doesn't look like he's like enjoying this anymore. Mm-hmm. And part of that with Rielly is obviously it was really rough for him. It was really rough for the team. So like it kind of makes sense. And you wonder if now you have a coach who is more of a backer, a believer, whatever you want, in Jim Hiller, like maybe it works and maybe it's different. But then it's like, is it just time? Like it's 13 years, a long time. Like maybe it's just time, but I don't know. Like it's such a weird situation because usually like with Nurse, these things get out and then they just happen.
Yep. All right. Let's, I've stalled long enough. Let's talk about I think Darren Raddysh is the biggest move of the summer, certainly as far as dollars, but I don't know that there's one that's going to have a bigger impact on the team than Sergei Bobrovsky coming in at, I would argue, a reasonable cap hit, but a 3-year term. So this is another big bet. It's a risk. And it's a risk where reportedly the 3x7 was what Bobrovsky's camp went to the Panthers with, and the Panthers said no. Thanks for the 2 Stanley Cups. Thanks for being one of the most important players in the history of our franchise, but no, you're not worth 3x7. And then they take that offer to the Leafs, and the Leafs say, yep, we'll jump on that. Walk me through what the thinking here is, and what are the odds that this works?
So they're obviously betting on his resume, which is strong, Hall of Fame worthy. They are betting on the fact
one of the great, perhaps the best goalie in history, according to John Chaika, when it's all said and done.
Yes. Hyperbolic statements have been there at times.
Yeah.
I think he also said like Raddysh is like a defenseman that they've like never had, and it's like I guess that's kind of true, but it's like anyway. So they're betting on his resume, the fact that he's been a very good goalie for a very long time. They're betting on the fact that he plays all the time, like he is durable. He's 50 games ish every single year. He plays all the time in the playoffs. Like they have obviously had issues with that with their many goalies over the last decade plus, dating back to Frederik Andersen played a lot, but then obviously had some playoff issues. Jack Campbell, they've just had a lot of instability in the crease. So they are betting on someone who can just play all the time and potentially play well. I guess the question I've been thinking about a lot lately, since I started thinking about this possibility, what would make it a success? Because he won a Vezina trophy forever ago. He was a finalist a few years ago. Okay. So he had a really good year 3 years ago. His average goaltending, would that be okay? Is that good enough? Is it above average? What do you think actually makes it where you look back and you're like, yeah, that made sense, them going out and signing him?
I think it is average goaltending, or maybe the way I would phrase it would be good enough goaltending to get you into the playoffs, and then you get playoff Bob, which doesn't necessarily mean he leads you to a Stanley Cup. I think we have to be realistic about what this Leafs team is, but that if I'm John Chaika, I'm probably thinking that the Bobrovsky-Stolarz combo gets me to the playoffs, and then for the first time, maybe in the Matthews era, we go into the playoffs with no goaltending questions. We have a guy who has done it. He's won in the playoffs. He's got cup rings. He's not going to get phased. We're not going to be looking over our shoulders going, who do we start? Oh boy, is this playoff Freddie? What's happening to Jack Campbell? On down the list. That I suspect is probably what they're ideally looking for. Could it happen? I mean, it could. If you follow the NHL at all, you never say never on goaltending in any direction with any player. But yep.
Well, can I tell you something?
That feels like what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's something I was doing some research on him today. I believe he will be the oldest goaltender in the league next year. So just keep that in mind. We've been he's turning 38 in September. Unless James Reimer signs somewhere and Cam Talbot signs somewhere, Sergei Bobrovsky will be the oldest goaltender in the league. And it's old goaltenders sometimes work, but a lot of times they don't. And he was not a very good goaltender last year. And it's you can make a lot of reasons for that. So I get it. I just don't think it's I don't even know what percentage I'd put on it that it's going to work. And then there's the whole Joseph Woll trade component, which I am not the biggest, I've never been the biggest Joe Woll backer, but he was on a pretty good contract. He's shown some things. He's been better than Bobrovsky the last couple of years. So it's an interesting bet, and I get it, but I don't think it's as foolproof as it's oh, Sergei Bobrovsky. I'm watching the World Cup right now as we record this, and guys his age are just yeah, they're done. They can't play anymore. You know what I mean? It's time is undefeated, right?
And we have seen it with goalies. Obviously, Ed Belfour is the name that Leaf fans are crossing their fingers for. Dominic Hasek played well into his late 30s.
That is the greatest goaltender of all time. Let's be clear.
Until Sergei Bobrovsky gets a couple more years under his belt, he's keeping the throne warm. Yeah, I mean, it could work this year. It could work sure. $7 million worth this year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and I mean, to bring up a name that we've already brought up once, I saw somebody describe this contract as Marlowe-esque, and that's what it kind of feels like. And I get like, and part of this is, doesn't it feel with the Leafs that you're just projecting ahead the next 2 years, and then there's just this black hole on the horizon.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, we kind of said it with Raddysh, but like with Austin Matthews hanging over everything, two things happen in the next 2 years. Obviously, Austin Matthews' contract is up. And also, the era of we gave away our first-round picks ends. So it really feels like 2 more years to contend, and then maybe the whole thing blows up anyways. And maybe nothing matters past 2 years. And maybe I shouldn't be sitting here worried about year 3 of a contract on a goaltender who might not even be here, or he might be retired, or he might be on LTIR, although it's a 35+ deal. And,
but wait, see, I think we need to think about year 1. Like, to me, like, are we sure about year 1? Like, that's what I don't know.
We're sure that year 1, like year 1 feels reasonably in play to me in a way that year 3 doesn't.
Fair. Yes.
But it doesn't feel like a lock at all. No. And I tell you, man, to give you a sense of sort of where I'm at, I'd feel a lot better about Sergei Bobrovsky if he was here on a 1-year deal at a higher number than 7.
Yep, fair.
And then you go, you know what? We'll just do this a year at a time. And if that means that we end up giving you $9 million in year 1 and $8 million in year 2, and then you're still good in year 3, and we look back and go, oh, we ended up spending more than we needed to. Okay. That's called playing it safe, and that's that works. I really wonder about this, and with Anthony Stolarz, who's got a decent contract of his own, like it's not like they're not cheap on goaltending. Period. And I wonder, do you have any insight? Like Stolarz came here to get out from under the shadow of Sergei Bobrovsky, partly, to be either a starter in this league or at least a guy who was not playing like the 25 games a year like he was in Florida. And I think, the balance might be a lot closer to 50-50 during the season, but how does he feel about this? Like, oh, here comes the guy I used to sit behind, and now he's here again.
Well, I think the thing with him is, like, even if they hadn't done this and they had just kept Joseph Woll, he's probably playing, like, I don't know how much more he's playing, but I guess it's probably closer to 50-50, 60-40 maybe for Woll. But like, we've just seen it. Like he's not going to be able to play more than 30 games, and like probably 25 to 30 is the right number for him. Like he just keeps getting hurt, and like there's nothing you can do about that. I guess like it's just one thing after another. So in some ways, like I actually think this is great for him. It's not great for opportunity, but I don't know that the opportunity was going to be there anyway. Like, I don't know. I actually think there's a higher chance now with Bobrovsky that he bounces back, because he's just going to be asked to do what he was in Florida, where it's like, just play once a week. Just like give us one good start a week. And I think there's a pretty high degree of likelihood that if he does that, he's probably going to stay healthier, I would think. And I think the goaltending will be a lot better than it was. So they're better. Like, it's an interesting bet that they've made. And then obviously Akhtiamov is like their long-term security blanket, like for the post Bobrovsky era. And we'll see. Like,
and probably this year too, as you know,
yes,
not needing waivers.
Yes.
This is the guy who can come up when somebody gets hurt. I'm just going to say it because you look at the two guys they've got. I think it's likely. So, all right, I'm going to ask you two more questions, and we're going to wrap up. One question. I feel like this could be a whole podcast on its own, but maybe you can give me the short answer. Why Jim Hiller, and what is he going to do that's going to push this team in the right direction next year? As a fan, other than it probably can't be worse than year 2 of Craig Berube, what am I excited about here from a guy who didn't exactly get rave reviews in LA?
I think the hope is that he can get them to defend better than they have. Because like you saw last year and even the year before that, defensively, they just were not very good. And you can't make the playoffs, let alone contend for a Stanley Cup if you're bad defensively. Like it's just going to be impossible. So I think the hope is that he can help with that. He obviously, again, like it goes back to the Roslovic thing. It's like, how much does it matter that he coached these guys before? I think it probably matters more than the Roslovic connection with Matthews, just because there's a comfort, there's a familiarity with Matthews, with Nylander, where he has coached those guys before, knows those guys before. I think the roster is better set up for him to exploit those guys more than Craig Berube, where they have like some defensive centers who they can give some of those tougher matchups to and not have to use Matthews and Tavares as much. I think he can help the power play potentially. I guess Daniel Alfredsson can help the power play some in theory. Ottawa had a good power play last year, but their power play in the years before that wasn't very good. But anyway, we'll see. The power play weapons are better. Like they have Raddysh, we mentioned. McKenna, I think, can play an integral part on their power play. If the goaltending is better, that obviously is going to make the coach look better. They had to obviously make a change with Craig Berube, and it's like you looked around at all the options. The one that it doesn't really ever seem like they were super duper all in on is Bruce Cassidy, and I still don't really understand that because his resume just trumps Jim Hiller's. But I get the bet on Jim Hiller. Like I can see why they settle on him after a forever long process, but it's not like the big home run swing like with Babcock. Like even like remember the introduction with Babcock where it was like they did it inside like the big entryway of Scotiabank Arena. There was like employees. It was like this huge deal. And it just didn't feel like that with Jim Hiller, like in any way. And we'll see whether it actually turns out better than it did with Babcock. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that I would go back and double check the clips of that, but video review is a bit of a sore spot with Jim Hiller, so I won't go there. All right, last question. Let's wrap it up. Where does this team end up? You look at the Atlantic. What's the best case? What is this a playoff team? Is this a team that's even in the mix? Where do you have them right now in your horse race?
I've been thinking about what I would project for them, like point wise. I always like to do this in my head and then check with Dom, like what he actually predicts. And last year, we were obviously way too optimistic, but I remember saying like, I kind of see like 100, 101 points, and his projection was like 100.5. I was like, yes, right on line. So like if I was guessing right now, like I've been thinking about it, I would think somewhere in the 95 to 100 point range kind of feels right, but it's dependent on so many things. The biggest of all is Matthews. Like, is he back to being in the running for the Hart Trophy? Or is it more like the last couple of years? Is Bobrovsky going to be average, better than average, or is he going to be like what he was last year? Are some of the new guys going to fit in? Because like that's a lot of change all at once, and sometimes you bring in a lot of new players, and it's like there's too many new players here, let alone the coach. Is the defense going to hold up? Because like you mentioned, it is an old defense, like really old. I'm guessing it's probably got to be the oldest in the league. Like they did add Emil Andre, who's young, but everybody else is 30 plus. So there are a lot of questions. And then like, how good is McKenna right away? Like if he comes in and he's just like, he's not a superstar, but he's 40, 50 points and he's clicking with Matthews and he's helping the power play, that makes a big difference. So it just feels like there's a lot of range of outcomes for this team, but it looks like it has the potential to be a lot better than last year's team. Maybe a lot better is strong. Better.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I'm with you on better than last year because I feel like last year was sort of a everything that can go wrong did sort of year. I don't know that for me right now, 95 to 100 feels optimistic.
Yeah.
Maybe 90 to 90. Maybe I'm a low 90s guy, which isn't that. I mean, we're not that far off, but that could be the difference because I mean, you look at the Atlantic. I mean, certainly starting off, you got to put Tampa, Florida, Montreal ahead of the Leafs.
Yep.
Buffalo, based on what they did last year, more volatility, I think, in Buffalo than the other three, but they're right there. So now, if those are 4 playoff teams, you've got 1 spot left at the most in the wild card, and you've got a 100-point Boston team, you've got Ottawa, and even a Detroit team that, say what you will about them, finished ahead of you last year. So it's a big climb. I'm not. It might be too big, but we have seen some very weird stuff happen.
And Sean, I was just going to say, like they need more. Like the roster might not be settled. They could use one more, like whether it's an impact defenseman or an impact forward. Like they're a little like they're not, as we talked about with the top 6. Like they could use one more guy who's like a real guy, and I just don't know how you get that player, and if they can get that player.
That feels like it could be a slogan for a lot of spots on this team.
Sure.
All right, that's a good place to wrap. Thank you, Jonas. And we'll obviously keep an eye on all your Leafs coverage as the summer rolls on and into next year. And thank you for watching and listening to this edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Thank you to Jonas for coming on, talk about Maple Leafs with us, and to producer Jeff. We will see you next time on the Athletic Hockey Show.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.